What is going on, guys? And today we are back. We haven't done a video in a while, but we had two sent to us from our good friend of the channel, Mr. DonkeyOnTilt. He has two hands that he asked us to actually go over and review for him. He actually played these hands. Obviously, the first one here is Stud High Low Regular. This was in a Super Circus mixed game. The other is in a, I believe it's a Deuce to 7 Razz hand, but we are going to use Stud Flop Draw Alpha today to go over some of these spots again. Looking at these in game, sometimes I get these right and sometimes I get these wrong, but we're going to check the spot today for sure going forward. So let's look at the initial setup here as we kind of jump into this one. So we are going to have Mr. Phenom here. He's going to open the 5 of clubs. Myatt is going to 2-bet with the deuce of spades, and these two players here are going to fold. Now, the reason I just want to highlight this for 1 second is as I go over to Stud Flop Draw Alpha, I want to highlight everything that needs to be highlighted, even including the dead cards, which is the 7 of spades, it's 7 of hearts and the 5 of spades. And then the other two hands over here, we got to add a hand as well. First hand over here is going to be the 5 of clubs. The second hand is going to be the deuce of spades, and then our hand is going to be the 8 of clubs, and we're going to start by running the simulation here. As it goes along, we're going to go back over here to check what happens here. Now, the first thing here is I think we kind of have an interesting decision with this hand. Now, one thing that we've always said in Stud High Low Regular is that the ace in this game plays like the Joker, right? It's ultimate high and it's ultimate low. So basically in this situation, like you kind of can view it as two scenarios. Like you can kind of view it as a Razz hand where you're basically drawing right now to an 8. One of the problems if we are drawing to an ace to 5 Razz hand right now is a 2 5s, a 7, and a deuce are dead. We need all 4 of those cards, so it does hurt us a little bit. But with respect to the opposite side, we do have overcards to these. We do have overcards here. The pairs tend to be good in this situation. Obviously, we have an ace in our hand, and we do have 2 suits, even though one of the clubs, the 5 of clubs, is dead. So I think this is kind of a closer spot than some people would necessarily give it. Like I think if this is a 3-card 7 like Razz, I think we're definitely supposed to get in here. The 8 makes it a little bit closer. I also think too the 6 is kind of like an interesting card to go with it as well. Like ace deuce 8 is probably a slam dunk it in there. Ace 6 8 though, it makes it kind of more of an interesting hand just because of the fact of like we can make some overpairs to these guys hands over here and do okay. The first thing we're going to do is let's see how the action is kind of completed, because I think the call here is fine. Now we do get 3-bet and we do get 4-bet. Now the ranges change. We already know this. It's like once this usually happens here, once we call 2 bets, once it goes 3-bet, 4-bet, we can say like this range might have been opening relatively wide in this spot, but now when it goes 3-bet, this hand goes 4-bet, and we're going to get in there, put the 4-bet in, and it's going to go 5-bet call. I think the ranges narrow a little bit over here. So to go over here, I'm going to quickly pause actually, and then I'm going to narrow the ranges down and let you guys know what I did. All right, guys, and through the magic of editing, again, we are back. The first thing we're going to notice here is this is our exact hand, our exact range. We were able to put this in through the PPT. Basically, the Pro Poker Tools syntax, which is super nice. The deuce of spades over here, I basically gave like aces plus every suited ace combo. I think our opponent here is probably capping these. Like, I don't know if our opponent like definitely, I mean like this opponent can definitely like 2-bet these combos, but I don't know if he's 3-betting, 4-betting them. It's not the worst thing in the world. I also removed some of the like 2-bet combos of like, you know, the queen 3 deuce spades. I don't know if he's necessarily 4-betting them in this situation. And even if we can click on it, I'm not quite sure. Can we remove combos? No, it doesn't show the equity for him. So let's just forget about that for a second. But I basically gave him like the suited good combos again over here for the most part, like kind of the suited babies. The suited aces, ace low combos, I did take out the ace 8 over here. Rolled up aces, and then like the good, we'll say like the 6 high straight draws for the most part, wheels obviously without an ace as well. That's what the deuce range look like. And then the 5 over here, kind of the same thing. He can't really have obviously the suited ace combos because that's removed based off the fact that we have the ace in our hand. But he does have like these ace 5, ace 4, ace 3, ace deuce. The straight draw 5s, the suited combos, even like up to the 9, I think are totally fine. Again, I've removed some of these combos of like the king 7 combos because again, like he's starting to get into a rough area, especially since we have the 8 of clubs showing. I think a lot of our cold calls here in this situation are going to have like some sort of clubs most or a fair bit of the time too. So I don't think those hands want to put too much equity in. You kind of turn your hand face up, but at the same time too, like you can still be protected when you have like this type of hand. When you have like the 5 and say like 3 deuce offsuit or something like that, you can just like go ahead and cold call. You could jam too. That is like totally fine, but you can also protect your range at some point by just like cold calling some of these hands as well. All right, let's go to the next street here. And on the next street, we catch a good card. Mr. Phenom catches what is pretty much a brick in the situation. And, excuse me, Myatt catches a 6 of clubs. So one thing I thought in gameplay, and I haven't run this math yet, as well as when the deuce 6 bets here, I actually think that we should be considering raising this combo. This is one of the best cards that we can possibly catch in this situation. Because like obviously if anyone's paying attention, which I don't really know how many people are paying attention in this situation, my opponents in this level of game, but one of the 7s is dead, and when you catch the 7 here, it's like you unlikely pair it, so it's going to completely complete something with respect to your draw. Plus at the same time too, it is a club. So if we go back over here and we update the boards, because I don't think anything's going to change, but the 5 catches the 9 of diamonds, the deuce catches the 6 of clubs, and we catch so our buddy Donkey over here catches the 7 of clubs, and now we're going to update that as well. And we can see over here that the deuce 6 does pull ahead. So, I mean, significantly enough. And then our equity versus that hand versus the third one, we're pushing more than 33% in this situation. So I definitely think that jamming in this situation actually does make some sense given our opponent's range over here as well. I don't think anything changes. So if we look at the deuce 6 here, does the deuce 6 ever check? I think the answer is relatively no. Even like the suited aces here, he's going to have a 6 draw with backdoor flush draw. If you can get the 5-9 to ever fold and get jammed in there, it's not the worst thing in the world as well. Even if you made a pair of 6s, this isn't like the worst spot ever in the history of the world to consider doing it. So let's go back over here. And it is going to go bet call. And call again. I think for the most part here, I would probably throw in 1 raise. I don't think Mr. Phenom's folding, but it's one of those spots where I think you kind of want to jam your opponent. They were jamming you on the previous street, but all right, now it gets a little bit kind of wonky, but I still don't think we're ever folding in this situation. Again, Myatt here bets with the 10. Now a couple things here. If Myatt doesn't have a straight draw in the situation, or if Myatt doesn't really have like a good low draw, like say paired at 6, I feel like this bet is a little bit suicidal. And I think like part of the time here, he wants to just check anyways, and maybe, I wouldn't say go for check raise, but the 9s are pretty far ahead of like anything that he could relatively have here, except maybe aces. And the reason being is because like, even if he does have a straight draw in this situation, like 2, 3, 4, 5, 9s are ahead, and plus 9's got a better draw at this point versus like a 10 and maybe a 6 low draw. I think the 9s are pushing a little bit of equity in this spot. I'm not quite sure if that's the case, but it doesn't really matter because we know that Donkey is over here. This 7 clubs for his range for the most part is doing really well. Now the king here is like, yeah, it's kind of like, we caught a king. But when our opponents catch here, like say Mike caught a 5 and Mr. Phenom here catches like a 6 or maybe a 3 or something like that. It's a little bit more tricky, I would say, by far. Even catching the 9 here, if Myatt caught a 5, it's a really, really tricky spot now because we can't really make a pair unless we make an ace to beat the 9s. And now Myatt's like got a possibility here that Myatt could have like an easy straight 6 or 6 low draw already. So in that situation, it could be a fold. But given this exact combo here, we have an ability to beat the draw right now. And Mr. Phenom now, even if we make an 8 low and he catches a good card, he's still not going to beat us on the next street. So in this situation here, I think this is just a go ahead and continue. We'll update the boards in a second here. But this is definitely one thing we need to consider now is like it's going to go bet, call, and raise. We're going to go back over here. Let's update the boards really quickly again. I'm pretty sure that Donkey can never really fold at this point, and then he catches the clubs. So one thing you would also say too is that Mr. Phenom sometimes here also has a, I guess like some sort of like relative club draw too. And one thing to, well, was gonna say one thing, like sometimes what you want to do in that situation is not necessarily jam it with those combos, but I think in general he probably does want to go ahead and do it just because of like the hand given his situation. He is pushing the most equity in this spot by far, just kind of like given this range right now. Given this range, like there's nothing it looks like he's not a favorite three-handed against that we initially gave him. The 10-6 at this point. So the combos that he did have before, like I wouldn't expect him. We're gonna make a little bit. We're gonna remove. Let's do this. Add remove some combos when we get bet into and rebet, because I don't think this hand is like ace king. That's suicide. Ace queen, ace jack. Ace 9-6 versus 9-9-7. Probably not. Ace 6. I wouldn't think so, but again, like, you know, some of these combos in here, yeah, I don't think we can really put these in here. This doesn't make too much sense at this point. 9-4 shouldn't be 8, so let's remove. 8-7. Maybe I'm not the 9-4, but let's leave it like right about right there. I think that's okay. Let's see how our equity changes now at this point. Yeah, we're going down fast. We're at about 20, what do we have? Almost about 24%. So again, when this hand leads, you can remove some of the range. I don't think you can just like remove as much as we can once we get the 3-bet in. Now, the question here is like, we know it's probably going to go 5 bets again. If it's going to go 5 bets, we kind of have to start doing some math here, because there are cards on the next street where our equity does change a lot versus a little. Because like on the next street, we could definitely be ahead with an 8 low. Obviously the 5 and 9 of clubs are not necessarily great. We're kind of like getting like borderline where this hand's going, but we've put a lot of money in at this point. We're gonna have to put 32 more in, and I'm pretty sure we're definitely gonna get the right price, because if this pot size was, what's it, 32, I mean it only needs to be what is that, 128, and it's already at 123. So I mean, we're already pretty much at there anyways, where we're just going to have to probably call a cap and see the next spot. Definitely not a good street. Now, here's something that we definitely need to notice in this spot. Mr. Phenom did not put any more money in. And when this happens, usually there is something, I would say, relatively going on with his hand. So if we kind of clean out and we go over and look at the 5-5-9, because again, this hand tends to have like close to the most equity in this situation. You know, like, does he have 5s full? Probably not. Does he have aces? Probably not. Like, definitely not 5s full, I would say, in this spot, just because of the fact that like he wants to jam his equity, and everyone's already calling anyway. So, in those situations, you probably just want to go ahead and jam. Yeah, I mean, he probably doesn't have aces. Man, yeah, there's a lot of hands he wants to jam here. I'm not quite sure what I would remove from his range. It's an interesting one. I don't know. We'll just save this range as is right now and basically kind of remove the 5-5 ace, and I'm not sure if I remove too much else for the most part, but once we get flat called there, I mean, that's really good for us in a lot of different ways. So next street, we do catch a 5, and there's something to be said on this street. I really believe this, where I think DonkeyOnTilt should raise. He catches my at bets. He's open-ended. He's against, and now the other thing too here is like he can represent straights, right? Like of the 8-7s that he called in this, he can represent, like, he could theoretically represent 6-4. The 6-9 clubs is hard because I'm not quite sure if he's calling here with 6-9. Probably shouldn't be in this situation. Probably want an ace in your hand. And the thing is like if he raises and he's up against a pair, he has the best low. If he raises and he's up against a better low, then his ace king high right now is good. I don't think Myatt's going to show up with the 9-7. I guess the 9-7 of spades is like one combo. It's possible, but I mean, I guess that combo is relatively light just from the fact that like 9-9-7-7-7, because there's only realistically one combo of 9-7 left in like the whole deck anyways. But I really think in this situation he should raise and put Mr. Phenom in a really awkward spot, kind of going forward, because like I think there's some things here he can represent. I'm trying to think maybe if it changes that much, but one thing that we can definitely look at here is let's look at the updated boards. So we catch the 5 of diamonds, and he catches the 8 of spades, and then he catches the 7. And I think I actually make a mistake here by saying he should relatively raise. Because now looking at this, it looks like he's definitely the favorite. It's hard for me because I still don't know what hand he wouldn't want to jam in this situation, just kind of given the board. Maybe some sort of random split. I might be missing some like random sort of split 5s he could theoretically have, but man, this is kind of a tough one for me, I would say. At first, I definitely thought I would want to raise and try to get this heads up against Myatt, but seeing now that his range is so far ahead, I guess theoretically he just should not be folding. So let's go back over here. It's going to go bet. We're going to call. And then Mr. Phenom doesn't raise. I don't really expect a raise considering the previous street. 2 6/8s are out. And I don't really think he was jamming that hand, so I'm not really too worried about straights. So we do call. And then on the river here, I mean, we absolutely banked them the immortal like card that we're looking for in this spot. And like when Myatt checks, this is just a dream because our hand basically is going to be scooping this hand almost always. I think any sort of like 8-6, relatively good 8-6 low is going to bet. And yeah, I mean, this is just kind of a dream scenario for us. And if we go over here and we update the boards and we just give ourselves the 9 of hearts, let's see how we're doing in this situation against these ranges now at this point. I mean, we're printing at 50%. And it's obviously it's a really good card for us considering our opponent over here has open 9s, but we're going to bet. And they're both going to call. And let's see what they have it shown on here. So Mr. Phenom had 3-7, didn't jam. And then Myatt over here could have had the buried aces, which I think makes sense, but also too, like it makes a little bit of sense at some point. We said this from the start to have like maybe the ace, queen, deuce of spades. So not really sure, per se, but again, I think just given the price on every street, I think, Donkey played this hand pretty good. You know, it's one of these things with like going forward, you hate to have like this 8 like cold calling up, but I still think this is probably the right play. I think we had like roughly 30% at the start of the hand. We are playing in a 6-12 game, so the antes are a little bit different as well. The reverse implied are like tough going forward at some point. And you know, some of your blockers are dead. So at first when he first sent me this hand, I do think, like I said, I probably would have folded just based off the fact that like the 5 is dead, the deuce is dead, the 5 is dead, and the 7's dead. So you have some of your cards out that you do need. But man, at the same time too, when you're like, you know, staring at a 2 flush and an ace in your hand style regular, it's tricky spot. Like this is a hand that I definitely would have just thrown away back in the day and not even thought about it. But it's definitely one of these situations where I think I give it kind of second thought. There was one during the I think the High Roller Bowl last year. I think it was like bet raise, re-raised, and Scott Seaver called with ace 5-7. And like all like I think aces, 5s, and 7s were like relatively all dead. So again, it's just like less likely Scott was going to make a pair, but his 7 was up. And I thought to myself, like, man, I would have just thrown this hand away in the past. And you know, you did dig into it a little bit, and like you're just never doing that bad. It's kind of the same thing here. Like the ace 6-8, you know, was always going to relatively have like 30%. It's like, well, he didn't have 33%, so you should call. It's like, I mean, not quite sure. It just probably depends on what your opponents are like relatively jamming. Like sometimes they jam incorrectly with like some worse hands here. Like maybe they say they have ace 2 queen, decide to bet, and then the 8 calls, and they like just feel like they're obligated to 4 and 5 bet that hand. If that's the case, then like this hand is just printing against their ranges too. So I think on the margin, I think actually Donkey played this hand pretty good. There was like a raise or two that I would have thrown in there. I think the first raise on 4th Street would have been a little bit better, but I would have thrown a raise in on 6th Street. And looking at that raise on 6th Street, I think it is not as good as I necessarily thought it, because it slams, it just hammers. And 6th Street here is like Mr. Phenom's range is actually the favorite against both of them. So I think that would have been a mistake, but kind of a cool hand. Obviously our good buddy here, DonkeyOnTilt, decides to just go ahead and scoop this pot right here. So that was a nice start for him. But that was the first hand. Let's go find our deuce to 7 Razz hand. All right, the second hand over here is a Razz hand. This is deuce to 7, so this is going to matter here. Muppet Town over here is going to open, and Donkey on Tilt is going to 2-bet. Obviously, we have basically the effective nut starting hand in deuce to 7 Razz with 2, 3, 4 plus a 4 is dead. Good for us. Yukon Brad here decides to cold call Jack. Now, this is a mistake. Now, no matter what you look at over here, for the most part, like obviously we're printing. We are going to give the Jack. This is probably pretty easy to find. Like we're going to give him like obviously the top of his relative range here. And we can see here is, I mean, like 20% is like all he's going to get in this situation. Not to mention that, but at this point too, like given these ranges, like these two hands are just going to jam you every single time. I don't care if Muppet Town is basically stealing here. I think Muppet for the most part here is just going to go ahead and absolutely jam Yukon Brad, because one, you can generate fold equity from Brad's hand, and two, like, I mean, if you cold call here, you really turn your hand face up. I think this hand just wants the pure jam, and it's going to get jammed. But I mean, like, what are you going to do in this situation realistically? Like maybe you're in a tournament, you're close to like the edge of the money, and you have a really awful, like, you know, king deuce here, you might like go ahead and call. But I mean, generally here it's just going to go 3-bet, 4-bet, yeah, call, 5-bet, call. And the question here about this specific hand was more along the lines, we'll get to Fifth Street in a second here. But I mean, there's not really much to say at this point, I think, or maybe, I don't know, Fifth Street, Sixth Street. Here, let's go. Let's update the boards, because I mean, we are just absolutely printing at this point. The king catches the jack catches that, the 4 catches this, and then our specific hand, we catch the 10 of hearts. And we'll take a look at those equities. But having 70% on 4th Street in Razz is, I would say, tough to do, as for sure. One thing I do want to do, I think, actually a little bit here, is just maybe clean this up a little bit. Add remove combos, probably some of like the absolute worst combos, like obviously the aces, the kings. I guess the queens still have somewhat of a draw here, given the price. It's never going to get... The other thing too here is, you know, that like, I mean, Brad can't jam here with the king jack against the 10-4 against a 5-bet. So there's not really much theoretically you can do. 2, 2, 3, 3, even like the ones that were stealing before. Maybe the 4s can fold. And I think the rest are probably just calling 1-bet. So again, we still have a relatively wide range at this point. One second, I actually want to save the range, and we'll update the equities before we go on. Oh, wait a minute. What? Oh, well, we're going to have to get to this in a second, but Brad raises. Let's well, the one thing we can definitely do in this situation is I did not expect to raise it. I did not think that Brad raised this one. So obviously, looking at this, like Brad here is 10% equity against like both these ranges when he puts the raise in. So obviously, this is just not a good raise. If we go back to Muppet's range over here, for the most part, I think we're going to start to remove the worst of the range. Because I believe that Muppet believes he's going to absolutely smash here when DonkeyOnTilt gets back to him. And I don't think going to call with like those combos. I mean, the pot's relatively big at this point. Man, this is kind of an interesting... This is just such an interesting spot. But I think what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to remove the worst of the combos. Just maybe the worst of the combos, and then leave some still in there that have the ability to still like relatively be bad, but it's going to be hard against obviously a 5-bet here. So 3-bet, call. Again, not too much at this point. Brad's range hasn't really changed at this point. Now this is kind of an interesting spot, because the only question here is, should he bet into both players? I think the answer here is actually he's supposed to check against Muppet catching a 3 here. I think this is a mistake. So if we update the boards here and we put the queen, the king catches the 3, and the jack catches, this is just an interesting hand overall. And we run the sim. Yeah, we basically we caught up with Muppet's range. Now this is under the assumption here also that there's a couple bricks in here and a relatively wide range, which I think is totally fine considering the steal, and given the action in the hand. The only question is we should bet. I actually think this bet's fine. I think this bet's fine because like if you get raised by Muppet Town, it's not the end of the world by any means. So I think this lead here is actually fine. I expect it to go bet raise actually, but it does go raise, and we just call and call. So if we go back over here, I think what we will do with respect to the 3 is we're going to remove some of Muppet's reins when there is a raise. 3. I don't want all the combos at 3 in here. The reason being is because I think Muppet should throw in an occasional raise to throw your opponent off on the next street and theoretically win it. So we are going to reduce some of the combos, but put a couple combos in there, and we can see once the raise goes in now, we're still at 40%. And yeah, Brad's in kind of a dire spot, I would say. Next street is kind of a nightmare for our hand. Obviously now we're drawing at a 10, and we could be throwing dead against the 9. The question here though is, yeah, it was a 6 street question, is should we continue? I think the answer is yes, just one given the pot size. I mean look at the pot at this point. I mean, we're basically getting, even with reverse implied odds, we basically have to call, we need 10% to call. So I think that kind of just solves that problem right here. I don't think we're ever not going to be getting the right price, but I mean, it's very obvious Muppet in this situation is going to be printing money. So yeah, we can see here, we still have 20%, and I think we roughly, with even reverse implied odds at this point, I think we need roughly 10% given the pot size. So we're definitely getting that. Where I get the reverse implied odds is basically I add the next 2 bets. We're going to call 24 on 2 streets. And the total right now is going to be around, somewhere around 280. So we probably need like 7 or 8% with reverse implied odds to get to showdown in this spot. So yeah, I mean, like there's just spots where we're dead, but at the same time too, like the 9 is live. So, and the 9 is a hand that Muppet would definitely jam. So I think we just go ahead and continue in the spot. And at this point, I don't think we're like theoretically folding, especially when we make this hand. Like before, you could make the argument if we caught like the worst card in the deck, say we caught like the case king or something like that, that might be the hand to consider folding against. But now once we get to this river over here, if we update our board and we catch the 5 of diamonds on the last card, and now these cards are dead, we'll just run it, but that hand's dead anyway, so it doesn't matter. So it's going to be 0 equity. We can still see we're actually doing just fine. So I think this hand by Donkey was played actually pretty good, looking at all the things considered. He does call the river, and we can see that Muppet over here makes a value bet with the 10, 9, 8, 4, 3, and I think that's totally fine because I think Donkey was probably incentivized to call the river with a queen given the pot size anyways. So yeah, like I like this bet. Again, we kind of see, we're not quite sure what Muppet had with respect to what was in the hole, but I think that relative range for the most part makes a lot of sense, that we kind of narrowed down. It was kind of close with the pairs, given the pot size and, the ability to jam like the King Jack hand. I mean, yeah, when King Jack decided to raise the 410 on 4th Street, it's, one of these things too is like looking over some of these hands, it just like gives you the ability to find yourselves in really awkward spots. Like you don't expect to be playing deuce to 7 too often, where you jam and someone calls with a jack and the king, then it catches a king and then like raises and tries to get your opponent off something when, I mean, your opponent probably has like somewhere around 10% equity. So you find yourself in these weird spots sometimes, and you're like, what do I do? I mean, like, I know I'm supposed to jam. I know Muppet's probably supposed to call. I'm going to jam. But like on 6th Street here, when Muppet catches this 9, depending on like what the range is like, should we ever fold? And I say this to people a lot because, one of the things that I do is I promote a lot of the tools on here, like Donkey's Lab and also Stud Flop Draw, Omaha Mate for the most part. But one thing realistically is a lot of those tools are extremely good for looking at stuff pre-flop. And I tell people, I'm like, look, you want to make sure that you are focusing and practicing in those pre-flop stuff, because like those are quantifiable mistakes. You can see how big a mistake is, if you play a certain hand versus not. But you want to be digging into the later streets as much as you can with some of the equity tools like Stud Flop Draw. Hopefully when Alpha comes out, this is going to be awesome for you guys, because you can dig into these spots pretty hard, because you can, going back, that'd be really cool. I actually think I might text him and see if we can put like the previous street equities and stuff on here. But the reason I say this is because if Donkey had made that fold on 6th Street, and we go back to the hand really quick, and we see that he roughly had about 20% equity at this point. Basically, he had about 20% equity in the pot, and it was $230-ish. So, roughly around like $100. Roughly about $50. The mistake he was basically making was like the equivalent of, what was it, 2 big bets or something like that. And you can't make that mistake pre-flop in like almost any game. I mean, in like PLO, obviously, if you get dealt like quad 9s or something like that, not even PLO, like PLO 8, you get dealt quad 9s and put it in, like maybe you can make that type of mistake. But I mean, generally, you can't make that type of mistake in like some of these games. So, pre-flop, I mean, but on later streets, you can definitely make those mistakes. And I say, everyone, like, you want to avoid the big error on later streets, because it is worth so much more than any pre-flop mistake you make. Like if he had folded here, he probably would have totaled every single pre-flop mistake over the course of like this 300 hand session that he would have made right here and then in this single spot. Now, in game, he didn't know, but this is one of the reasons you want to go back and you want to study the spot as much as you possibly can if you don't know. Because, when the pot gets super big, if you make the big mistake and you make the misread, you got to make sure that you're going back and looking to make sure, like, where did I fold? Like, what type of mistake did I fold? Was it small in the situation? Like, did he only have 5% equity, and like, he was getting 5% with reverse implied, like probably not getting the right price, etc. But in this situation, like when he texted me about this hand, one thing I even thought to myself is like, you could have the best hand right now. There's a fair bit of 9s in this range over here. And if we actually go back, can we see the hands? High card draw for the most 4 card. Main hand. Okay, yeah, king at this point. So basically, given the range that we gave to that exact player, he's going to have a king roughly 30 to 31% of the time, something like that. So in that situation there, you're actually going to be folding the best hand at that point, 31% of the time. And I mean, obviously, again, that would be a big mistake. So again, the other thing too is like, given that range, can our opponent have a 10 plus something else? So could they be drawing like pair plus 10 draw? And if we do that, we still have a 10. So again, one of the things I keep stressing is look at the equities on later streets to when you're making these decisions. Again, stud flop draw, tell them Learn Mixed Game sent you. Obviously having a good base in some of these games. Use Chris's site. Obviously, I'll put a link down below for that as well. But again, I think he played this hand just perfect for the most part. Jammed when he should have been jammed, threw the bet in when he needed to, and didn't try to make like a hero fold and make an absolutely huge mistake in those situations. Again, like, sometimes you just find yourself in some of these wild games where a third person just says like, all right, not today, boys, and just wants to put in as much action as you possibly can. In situations like that, I mean, yeah, you just don't want to make hero folds realistically. That's just kind of my opinion. So I've kind of been rambling for the most part, but again, yeah, go over to Stud Flop Draw, tell them Learn Mixed Games sent you. Alpha should be out, I think, relatively soon. The guy's been making a ton of cool add-ons and stuff with respect to like rangefinders and everything. In the future, this is, I think, going to be one of the main go-tos. I like what Omaha Mate and obviously Donkey's Lab is doing right now. But I think with respect to like the equity stuff, you're just not going to find this really anywhere else. And yeah, we'll see how everything goes in the near future. But as always, guys, thanks for watching. Questions, comments, or feedback, please leave them below. Until then, good luck at the tables. Play well. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.